I never thought much about God. Sure, I believed he existed, but I figured I had all the time in the world to figure things out. Life was about having fun, chasing dreams, and doing whatever made me happy. Church, that was something I went to when my parents insisted. Pray? Only when I needed something. The idea of eternity, heaven, or hell never felt real to me. But everything changed the day I died. Yes, you heard that right. One moment, I was just another teenager going about my day, and the next, I was lying lifeless on the pavement, my body broken after being hit by a truck. I don't even remember the moment of impact, just the sound of screeching tires, the sharp gasp of people around me, and then silence. No pain, no fear, just an eerie stillness. It was the strangest feeling, as if time had been ripped away from me, and then suddenly, I was floating. At first, I thought I was dreaming, but as I looked down, I saw something that sent chills through me. I was staring at my own body. I saw everything. My lifeless body crumpled on the ground, blood pouring around me. I saw the driver jump out of his truck, his face frozen in horror. A woman screamed, dropping her shopping bags, while a man fumbled for his phone, dialing 911 with shaking hands. I wanted to shout, to tell them I was okay, but I wasn't okay. I wasn't there anymore. I was above it all, watching as if I were just a spectator in my own death. And then I felt something pulling me. It started as a tug, almost gentle, but within seconds, it became an unstoppable force. I was being ripped away from the world I knew, yanked out of everything familiar. I braced myself for the light, for warmth, for the kind of near-death experience I had always heard about. But there was no light. Instead, there was darkness, thick, suffocating darkness that swallowed me whole. It wasn't just an absence of light, it was an absence of everything good. I couldn't see, but I could feel. A terrible, crushing weight surrounded me, pressing in on all sides. My heart pounded as I realized something that made my soul tremble. I wasn't going up, I was going down. I don't know how long I was falling. Time didn't exist there. It was just darkness, stretching endlessly in every direction. At first, I told myself it wasn't real. Maybe I was dreaming. Maybe this was just my brain shutting down. But the deeper I went, the heavier the air became, thick like smoke, burning in my lungs even though I wasn't breathing. Then came the voices, whispers at first, slithering through the darkness like snakes. They weren't human. They were cold, mocking, and filled with something worse than hate. They laughed at me, repeating my worst thoughts, my deepest regrets. You wasted your life. You thought you had more time. You don't belong to him. Their words cut deeper than any wound, because they were true. I had ignored God. I had pushed him aside, assuming I could turn to him whenever I wanted. But now, I wasn't sure if I had that chance anymore. The fear hit me like a tidal wave. Then, suddenly, everything stopped. The voices, the falling, the weight of the darkness, it all froze. And that's when I heard it. A voice, but not like the others. This voice didn't slither. It didn't mock. It commanded. Powerful, unshakable, filled with authority and something else, sorrow. Enough that single word shattered the darkness around me. In an instant, everything that had been holding me disappeared. And then I saw him, Jesus. There are no words that can truly describe what it was like to be in his presence. He wasn't just light, he was the source of all light. He wasn't just love, he was love itself. But as I looked at him, I saw pain in his eyes. A deep sorrow, as if he had been waiting for me, calling me my whole life, only for me to ignore him. And then, without a single word spoken, my entire life began to play before me. Every moment, every sin, every time I had pushed him away, I saw everything. Not just the big moments, but the small ones, to the times I had laughed at people who took their faith seriously, the times I had chosen my own desires over what was right, the times I had felt a tug in my heart to pray, but shrugged it off. It was all there, laid bare before me, and it wasn't just my actions, I could feel the weight of them. The ripple effect of every careless word, every selfish decision. I saw people I had hurt without even realizing it. I saw opportunities God had given me, moments where he had called me, and I had ignored him. And the worst part, I couldn't argue. I couldn't make excuses. Standing before the King of Kings, all my justifications crumbled. There was no, but I was a good person. There was no, I didn't know, I had known. Deep down, I had always known. I had just chosen to look away. And now, as I stood before him, I finally understood what Matthew 7:23 meant. Then I will tell them plainly, I never knew you. Away from me, you evildoers. I wanted to beg for another chance, but I couldn't speak. I felt like I was standing on the edge of eternity, with no way forward, no way back. Then he turned his eyes away from me, and I felt the absence of his presence like a knife through my soul. In that instant, I knew what hell really was. It wasn't just fire or torment. It was separation from him. It was the absence of love, of hope, of everything good. And I had chosen it. Not by openly rejecting God, but by ignoring him, by assuming I had more time. Then he looked back at me, and I saw something unexpected: mercy. Pure, undeserved mercy. "This is not your time," his voice echoed, not just in my ears, but through my entire being. And then, in a flash, I was somewhere else. I was standing before the most beautiful sight I had ever seen: the gates of heaven. The gates stretched endlessly, glowing with a brilliance I can't fully describe. They weren't just made of light, they radiated a warmth, a peace, a sense of belonging that I had never felt before. This was home. This was what my soul had been searching for my entire life, without even realizing it. There itself was alive, filled with a music that wasn't just heard, it was felt. Every note carried a joy so overwhelming that it brought tears to my eyes. I knew, deep in my spirit, that on the other side of those gates was everything good, everything pure, everything eternal. But as I stepped closer, I saw something that stopped me in my tracks. People, so many people, standing before the gates, waiting. Some were filled with joy, their faces glowing as their names were called, as the gates opened and welcomed them in. Others looked confused. Some were crying, some were pleading, and then I heard the most heartbreaking words spoken again and again. "I never knew you." I watched as people who had thought they were saved were turned away. They called out, reminding Jesus of the things they had done. "Lord, didn't we go to church? Didn't we do good things in your name?" But their names weren't in the book of life. Or worse, some of their names had been there once, but now they were faded, as if they had been erased. My heart pounded as I realized the terrifying truth: belief wasn't enough. Knowing about Jesus wasn't enough. Living a good life wasn't enough. These people had spent their lives thinking they were safe, thinking they had time to truly surrender, only to realize, too late, that they had never really given their hearts to him. And then I saw something that made my stomach drop. People I knew, faces I recognized, friends, people I had laughed with, partied with, people who had said, just like I had, "I'll get serious about God later." They were crying, reaching out, but it was too late. The doors were closing. I wanted to run to them, to pull them through the gates, to tell them to beg for mercy, but I couldn't. It was done. Their time had run out, and as the doors closed, their faces were filled with a terror I can't even describe. Not just fear, but absolute devastation, the realization that they had missed their chance forever. I heard their screams, not of pain, but of regret. It was the same regret I had felt when I stood before Jesus, seeing my life lay bare. The same regret of thinking I had time, that I could live my life however I wanted and deal with eternity later. But there was no later. That was the lie. The enemy had convinced so many people, including me, that we could wait, that we could put God on the back burner and come to him when it was convenient. But there is nothing in the Bible that promises us tomorrow. In fact, James 4:14 says, "Yet you do not know what tomorrow will bring." What is your life? You are a mist that appears for a little time and then vanishes. Then, in an instant, I was pulled away. The gates, the people, the music, it all disappeared, and I was falling again. But this time, it wasn't into darkness. I was crashing back into my body. My chest heaved as I gasped for air, my entire body trembling. I could hear voices, machines beeping, the sharp pain of consciousness slamming into me all at once. I was in a hospital. I had been gone for 3 minutes. 3 minutes, but it felt like an eternity. Nurses rushed around me, calling for doctors, but I barely heard them. All I could think about was what I had seen, what I had felt. I had been given another chance. I didn't deserve it. I knew I didn't. But Jesus, in his mercy, had sent me back. And I knew, right then and there, that my life could never be the same again. I had to change. More than that, I had to warn people. Because most people don't get a second chance. Most people don't come back. The days after I woke up felt like a blur. I tried to explain what happened to me, but no one understood. They said it was just trauma, a product of my brain trying to make sense of the accident. But it wasn't just a dream. It was real, and the truth I had seen was real. I could no longer pretend I was just an ordinary person, living a normal life. I couldn't go back to the way I was. I kept seeing the faces of those I had left behind, the people who had never truly known Jesus. I couldn't stop thinking about how many people were living their lives, assuming they had time to change, thinking they could come to Jesus when it was convenient. But there was no guarantee. My experience had shown me that time was not on anyone's side. The Bible makes it clear. We don't know when our time will run out. 2 Corinthians 6:2 says, "For he says, in the time of my favor I heard you, and in the day of salvation I helped you." I tell you, now is the time of God's favor. Now is the day of salvation. I knew what I had to do. I couldn't stay silent. I couldn't let people around me believe the lie that they could keep putting off their decision to follow Jesus. It wasn't enough to just know about God or to attend church when it was convenient. I knew now that surrendering my life to Him wasn't a one-time decision. It was a daily choice. I had to give everything to Him, my past, my future, and all my plans. Because that's what He deserves. That's what He's calling each of us to do. We don't have forever. The time is now. I felt a burning urgency in my heart, like a fire I couldn't ignore. I knew I had to share this message with as many people as possible. Heaven and hell are real. The choice is real, and the time is running out. After everything I had experienced, I couldn't just go back to my old life. It felt like I had been given a glimpse of eternity, and now I had this weight on my heart, a responsibility to share what I had seen, what I had learned. It wasn't just about telling people that heaven and hell are real, it was about urging them to make a choice before it's too late. I spent countless nights praying, asking God to give me the strength to speak up, to help me overcome the fear that still lingered in my heart. I was terrified of what people would think of me. I didn't want to be judged or called crazy. But the more I prayed, the more I felt this undeniable urgency. I thought about the people I loved, family, friends, CEO workers, and how many of them had no idea what was coming. How many of them were going about their lives thinking they had all the time in the world, just like I did. I thought about what it would be like to stand before Jesus and realize that I hadn't done everything I could to warn them. That thought was unbearable. Jesus had shown me the end times chaos, deception, destruction spreading like wildfire. People thinking they had more time, but they didn't. And I realized that we're living in that time right now. I'm not talking about some far-off future. I'm talking about today. In Matthew 24-42, Jesus says, "Therefore keep watch, because you do not know on what day your Lord will come." We have no guarantee of tomorrow. None of us do. And yet, so many of us are waiting for the right moment to give our lives to Jesus, to surrender fully to Him. But the right moment is now. The truth is, it may already be too late for some of us. The doors of heaven are closing, and we don't know when they will close for good. So I stand here today, telling you with everything I have in me, don't wait. Don't assume you'll have more time. The time to turn to Jesus is now. I know it's hard to face the truth. It's uncomfortable. It's painful. We want to believe that we have all the time in the world, that we can live how we want and turn to God when it's more convenient. But the reality is, none of us are promised tomorrow. The Bible is clear about that. In Hebrews 9:27, it says, "Just as people are destined to die once, and after that to face judgment, our lives are a vapor here for a moment, then gone." I had the chance to see what happens after we die, and I can tell you with everything in me that it's not something we can afford to ignore. Hell is real, heaven is real, and you don't want to wait until it's too late to make your decision. I didn't. I thought I had time, but I was wrong. So many people are going about their lives, assuming they'll have another chance. But the truth is, we don't know when our time will run out. I don't want anyone to experience what I did. I don't want anyone to stand before God and hear those terrifying words. I never knew you. That's why I'm here, sharing my story. To tell you that now is the time to choose. Now is the time to surrender. It's not enough to believe in God, to say a quick prayer here and there. Jesus is calling us to something more, something deeper. He's calling us to follow Him, to live for Him, to make Him the center of our lives. And if you're here today and you've been putting that decision off, I want you to know that you don't have to wait. The door is still open, but we don't know for how long. Please, hear me when I say this, don't wait until it's too late. Choose Jesus today. Choose life, because time is running out and the door is closing.